right. Well, welcome to the new episode of In the Art Scene. And today we're talking to Wendy Garfinkel and Astrid. And well, how are you guys doing?
Good.
Good?
Yeah.
And could you tell us a little bit, where are you now?
Well, we're in Athens, Georgia. I'm actually based in Atlanta, Georgia right now, but I used to be here in Athens, Georgia for a few years, especially during college. And I think that's where I met Wendy, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's how we met.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we're generally in the Atlanta, Georgia area, basically. Yeah.
All right. So Wendy, you're a photographer, and Astrid, you're a model.
Yes.
Yeah. And the reason I really wanted to talk to you today is because Wendy told me absolutely a crazy story of how you guys managed to do photo shoots distantly during the pandemic. I really am dying to hear about that.
Remote shooting. Yeah.
Yes.
It's definitely been a weird adventure.
Yeah. People started doing this when they were homebound. And so I've shot with people as I shot with a woman in Paris. I shot with a woman in Dublin, and I shot with a woman from Santa Cruz, California. And maybe somebody here on the East Coast. I've done it a few times, maybe 4 times so far.
Wow. And how is it technically possible?
So it's pretty nice that for the most part, cameras, you can hook them up to your computer. And nowadays they have the programs through your camera's software, or you can buy additional third-party programs that will allow you to control the camera. And this is not, unfortunately, controlling the movement of the camera, although there is some very sophisticated software out there if you really want to drop the money for it to do that. But it does allow you to control the settings of the camera from a computer. So we found a way to basically share the screen of our computers with someone else, and they're able then to decide how and when to take a photo using your camera.
Right. So Astrid's the model, and the camera's at her house. And I, the photographer, on my computer, shared that screen, or she shares the screen of the software on Zoom. But people mix things. They use Instagram video to talk while being on Zoom. There's all these technical.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it, with calling people on the phone to keep up conversations, or sometimes you can talk through Zoom. Some people use Zoom. There's a lot of different ways to go about doing it. And I think everyone's been kind of trying to figure out the best route for either themselves or just in general, what ends up working best in their area. I find that the internet in Atlanta is so bad most of the time. I really have to try to use whatever won't take up very much bandwidth.
Do I understand correctly that the model has to have in her or his possession the actual professional photo camera?
Yes.
Right.
So
and is it normal? Is it usual for models to invest in the camera, or is it something that was a necessity during the pandemic?
I think more so and more so. Some models definitely did not have cameras and went out and got some, or bought one, or was able to rent one or borrow from friends. But I think for the most part, a lot of models get into photography as well. I've met quite a few who get into modeling because they're interested in photography, and modeling's been a great gateway for them to get to learn and understand photography for when they one day choose to go into photography themselves. But I found that I have my own camera just so I could try learning more about modeling and self-portraits. But it's a great way to kind of connect with more people in the community. And so I think it's been pretty common for a lot of models to have cameras. And everyone who didn't have one went out and bought one just for remote shoots.
Yes, and that was what I was going to say, is that some of these people have these sections in their house that they set off for various sets. And then one woman actually knows how to do it outside.
Oh, wow.
She's taken it outside of her home, or, her place of living. And then I don't know if she's gone to a real particular location.
So it kind of depends. There are places like, for instance, I think most of Europe ends up having free Wi-Fi everywhere.
That's what it is.
And so they can take their camera and their laptop and set up these remote shoots anywhere that they want because they'll have an internet connection.
Yeah.
Some people buying hotspots so you can take your camera and laptop with you and still do these anywhere that you want to go. Of course, connection can be a
concern or
problem.
Yeah.
I have that problem just at my own house in Atlanta. We found out there's like a joke, at least last year in Atlanta, that nobody realized just how bad the internet connection was in Atlanta until everyone had to go remote and do Zoom calls.
Yeah, that's true. Well, there's cable, from like a Charter, or you could use or whatever company, Cox or whatever people have. But out here, I think AT&T and the phone companies' connections are different. Although the fiber is coming, that could help.
That might help. That might help. But there's considering most of those internet companies all have like a monopoly in whatever county they choose.
Yeah.
So you don't really get too much of a choice.
A city is better. Like if you're in Atlanta, like you, supposedly they have better connections in big cities, but
it depends on the city. So one of the issues with Atlanta is that we didn't already have a great connection, and then we've had an influx of people, and then they all had to go remote.
Right.
At home. So suddenly everyone's internet in Atlanta during the pandemic, like flatlined practically. Like everyone's just went in and out, like all through the pandemic, at least the first few months as people tried to figure out what to do. Whereas ironically, like you go to Chattanooga and it has, I think, the fastest internet in the
think you're right, actually. Yeah. I've heard that.
Because like when they were establishing the internet connections or whatever it was that they needed for the internet connections, Chattanooga went ahead and just bought the fastest internet possible.
Good for them.
Yeah, good for them. Atlanta.
Good for them. Yeah, we here in San Diego, I believe we had a little bit of a problem in the first couple months of pandemic because just the internet bandwidth was, so crowded. So people had some problems, but right now it seems to be a little bit more stable.
Yeah. I think people are starting to figure out a little bit more, I say, but I swear I think my internet's always cutting out when I'm at home in Atlanta.
All right, I have a question to Wendy. So the first time we spoke, I was under impression that this is actually a very specific remote kind of a software that allows you to access camera remotely and adjust certain things that you need in a photo shoot. But you mentioned that this might be Zoom or even Instagram or some other means of communication. So does that mean that you, instead of manipulating camera settings yourself, you are actually giving instructions to a model? No? So how's that happening?
So the model has the software for the camera. And it's sort of like, I don't know how this started, but this was something like, well, I want to take a picture of myself. And so of myself, like, my self-portrait. So it was developed, the software was developed with the camera so that you could do that. Now, I knew a nature photographer who put his camera outside, set up a bird thing for birds to be attracted to this log. And he would stay in his home because with animals and birds, they do run away if they hear anything. They have these things, people sit in these tents called bird blinds and various things when they hunt and also do bird photography. So anyway, this was something that, he would do, and he had a clicker from his house and would take the picture. So someone figured this out. I really don't know the specific history. It would be good to learn. But I knew people were doing this and it seemed interesting. Well, anyway, so that's the software and it comes with every camera. The camera's own software. And most of the time, people don't even pay attention to a lot of this stuff because they want to use the software that, like the various companies, Adobe and things like that, have their own probably, remote stuff too. And their apps on the phone and, on your computer and stuff. So what happens is that when you get on Zoom, the model from their end has the camera at their home and the software, that I can use because they allow me to share it. They turn that on and I can with my clicker or pen, my mouse or pen, I can use the aperture. I can change the aperture, the speed, the ISO, all those things on the camera. And then the big thing is they have to move the camera itself, like, point it toward themselves. And they usually have a variety of lenses available. Maybe they have a zoom lens that can do 24 millimeters to 70 or 105 or whatever they have. Sometimes most, I think, that's something up to the model who owns the lenses and the photographer to pick. Typically, so far I've used, one lens that's zoom because it's just easier. I don't much change that part because a lot of times some of these people have apartments and they're not big. So they might put the camera in a doorway facing them near a window. That was how I shot with the woman in Dublin. But again, there was a woman in LA who I took pictures of, and she had a little garden, and that's where we shot. And she showed me a setup she had in her place. And I said, well, can we move one of the items outside, a mirror, which was a mirror? And we shot that. And she was very happy with the pictures and everything. And so was I. And it was an experience. And she was lovely. And, there are groups now on Facebook called Remote Shoot. There may be 2 that I know of. And you can read what's going on. People will talk and you can ask questions in there. So that's how that works right now.
Wow.
I'm thinking it can really, too, be something that if a person really wanted to do something interesting, they might have their own studio space and have sections in the studio where, okay, I'm going to have a dark, a light, a color. There's a woman in London who's got a setup like that. Amazing work. Amazing. She's so talented.
She's really gotten into it. There's definitely some people who got into it.
Yeah, some people really,
Yeah.
I
think some people really took to it, and some people, it just kind of depends on your setup, what your interests are. For a lot of models I've heard, it's been nice to get to choose the entire setup and come up with everything and the quality of the backdrop to the settings to the lenses to the lighting. They get to kind of choose and customize themselves.
The need was created and really has opened up this real world. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I would never even thought that was something that's possible. But when you told me about that, I was like, this is such an incredible way of continuing your creative practice, right? Because, nature photographers, they can go outside anytime, or someone who is shooting the objects or still life. But when you work with real people, you kind of you were practically, stripped off your practice and during the pandemic. So you had to figure something out. And when you told me, I was mind blown that this is possible. And in a way, a lot of barriers were actually removed, that you were able to work with people, all over the place. I'm sure, Astrid, you were able to work with different photographers from all over the place as well. So my question to both of you actually is about that connection, because in the photo shoot, when you both are in the same room, there is this dynamic, there is an exchange of energy, the connection between the photographer and the model. So how does that feel in the remote setting for both of you?
I think in some ways it hasn't been too different.
It's not.
I think the only issue that I've ever experienced is any sort of connection issue, and so that might freeze a conversation. But other than that, I don't know if it's actually changed too much of the dynamic. Some photographers, I think, are quite forlorn that they can't move around and try to change up their angles, which I can completely understand. I think that does make it really
limiting.
Thank you. Limiting. That's a good way to phrase that. I think in some cases it's totally fine, because especially when you're working in these small spaces, there might not always be a million angles. But I think even still, as a model, I feel for a lot of the photographers that would try to, because I know even just in my self-portraits, I often move the camera around quite a bit. So I try to do this as well with photographers, trying to move and change the camera angles. And of course, like, you never really know what an angle is going to look like until you like set it up, and then you're not sure if it's going to be right, and then you have to tweak and tweak and tweak. And I think this can be a little annoying because you're tweaking like a stationary object and you're constantly having to go back and forth versus just something that seems so easy. You take for granted how easy it is that you yourself can see something that's wrong and then just slightly bend over more to one side or another side, or change the angle of the camera so like quickly and simply. But what I've heard a lot of people is it slows everything down. So instead of taking like thousands or hundreds or whatever of photos in like one session, you're really focusing on like what it is that you really want to keep and capture. And I think for some people, this remote shooting works out fine for them because it's helped them appreciate a slower form of photography.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as far as the dynamic with the people, there's definitely different people. And some are, it's like anything else, just chemistry.
Yeah.
And it's nice that I was always worried about that before I started doing the shoot, because I kind of knew some of the people and they kind of knew who I was. Once we got in the room, you really get a sense of the person, like once you're in the session, you really get a sense of the person. And one of the young ladies that she's younger than me, is that I'm going to be working with is coming here because she's touring on the East Coast. And so I'll be shooting with her at the end of October. She's coming to the area. But, I mean, there are many people that I know online, on Facebook, because there's a community of photographers and models. And you see some of the names again and again. Or if you forget to turn off like the follow, unfollow, then they're talking about their own life. And that might not be something you really want to like say, oh, I'm sorry, your mother had an accident or some crazy thing that they're upset about. I mean, it's not my place to really be involved in that kind of conversation. So I feel like, oh my God, I don't want to, it's like the screen stuff is so weird, sometimes.
Facebook and social media have really like, they show you a little bit more about a person, especially as they like, people blend the personal with the professional in a lot of cases. That is true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And I'm like, a yacker. So see people's stuff for a long time and it's their immediate friends. And I'm barging in on a conversation. I don't belong in. But I don't do that now. I mean, I know better,
It's hard to resist the urge sometimes.
I know. Yeah. I mean, somebody has a baby or something, that happens. And their mom, which I do, and stuff. So it's like, I mean, but they kind of know me and I saw them like grow up on Facebook in a way because it's been like, I think I've been on there since 2008, and that's a long time. That's more than 10 years.
Yeah. I would definitely say I do sometimes miss the in-person-ness of a shoot, like definitely leaving. I think for a lot of photographers, there's a lot of, I found that they have a very intense connection with their own camera and their own gear. But using my camera and my gear can be very off-putting to a lot of them. I think you get very used to whatever instrument you use for creating with, and being thrown into like these new situations with completely new technology, completely new lenses. A lot of them seem very thrown off base. I use a lot of natural lighting, or like I would have just like these light setups that I use for my self-portraits that I find perfectly fine. But a lot of photographers get completely jarred and like I've found that it makes them kind of emotional to try to use like a whole brand new situation that they're not very comfortable with.
Yeah.
And a lot of them seem to struggle and fight, especially I found this with the very beginning of the remote shoot. So many of them were like, and even still, like, I think they still end up getting really remorseful over it. And as soon as things would open up, they would immediately drop any sort of pretense of remote shooting, as far as I could tell in some cases. But
it's actually hard
Yeah.
it's hard to do.
Yeah, I can see how challenging it can be. Yeah.
You get so used to that sense of control. I think it would be very much like, I honestly don't know how I could relate it to modeling. I guess if you had to model without using your own body, like, which I guess in a lot of ways as models, we talk about that a lot because especially since most of us are in our like either early 20s to like late 40s, our bodies are constantly changing and it's maddening to be honest, to like have no idea what you're gonna look like half the time. And like some days are just completely different from other days and you're using a whole new body every other year. But like for photography, I mean, you have very much a lot of control and it's very much about control. It's controlling your light, controlling your camera. I think there's so much control that gets removed through the remote shooting. Some people like end up really liking this like ability to just kind of focus on taking and capturing a single shot. It reminds me very much of why so many photographers talk about wanting to do film, having to slow down, focus on a whole setup and moving everything around and just what the image is going to look like. But some people just, I think so much of photography is getting the movement and the interaction with themselves and the camera and getting to test around and play with light, that this kind of threw all of that away. And for people who found photography to be like much more of a hobby rather than an art form for themselves, it like was not, it was not satisfactory for what they were trying to do and what they really enjoyed. I mean, obviously, you don't completely know as a photographer, but from my experience from everyone and listening to how they felt about doing remote shoots, it very much felt this way. Whereas I think for a lot of models who really got into remote shoots, they enjoy feeling like they have control over the poses. They never worry about if they look horrible in poses because they can see what's going on at all times and they have a lot more control over the angles. They feel like they've gotten better quality of work this way because they know their angles and can use the camera and kind of like be a little bit more in control. And then as well, they don't feel quite as in danger. You're often meeting brand new people. And when you have a screen between you and a person, they can't exactly attack you whenever they feel like it.
Right. That's a great point too. Yeah.
A lot of advantages and a lot of things came up, different new ideas and thoughts about different things definitely came up during these sessions and experience of these sessions, you know.
So it sounds to me that in terms of control of technology and using the creative tools, the whole remote shooting situation is a little bit more challenging and vulnerable for the photographer. And it sounds like models actually got a chance to collaborate a little more because now they have access to the same thing and they can control the angle of the camera. And also it's a little bit more freeing because you feel more safe with, like, if it's a new photographer, for example, and you don't know the person, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I know that the film directors, Martin Scorsese, for example, has done remote film shooting for some films he's done. I'm not sure if it was the one with Fran Lebowitz or not. But that's something to think about because then it also reduces the expense of the film production. But yeah, I think I'd have to look it up, but I know that I read that he's doing some remote shooting stuff also. So,
that's really interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I definitely think that like the remote shooting is not going to go away anytime soon. I think a lot of people have really found that they really enjoy it to get to locations that they otherwise can't. Right. And then, and I've definitely talked to some photographers who, there are quite a few who have various kinds of body limitations, like are either wheelchair bound or something else that this has really like helped them for. And I think they will definitely be a huge market that will continue to push and strive for this.
Yeah, I mean, we're just at the beginning and I think the potential is fantastic, really. I mean, it's just when I see what the woman in London is doing, it's incredible. Really, it's amazing.
Let's take a short coffee break.
Producing this podcast sure takes a lot of energy. Would you buy me a coffee so I can continue doing it? I would really appreciate it. The link is in the show notes and on our website, intheartscene.com. Thanks for supporting our show. How do you guys find those gigs? How do you find people all over the world to shoot with, both photographers and models?
Well, I mean, in my case, I knew about the remote shooting. At first, I was like, well, I'm not so sure about this, but the person that I first shot with is a model that, I love her work. She's very good. And she has like a theater background, a dance background. She's an artist, all these models are artists, but I just seen her work and I knew she was friends with people I knew or felt comfortable with. So I just wrote her and said, I'd like to do a shoot. And then we did it, set it up, and it went really well. I mean, it went incredibly well. We had a window is always a golden opportunity, in my opinion, because it's a very soft light and you can do a lot with it if you have space. And so that's how I did my first one. And once she posted the photos that I shot with her, well, I just got emails abundant from models all over that saw my work and hers, but knew her and liked what I did. And I've been getting marketing emails or just, hi, no, something simple. I'd love to shoot with you one day, nothing over the top. And some people are very businesslike, so, I mean, this is I hate to say the word business, but it is an art, but it is a business. So people really work the same way they would if they had anything else going on, any other business, whether they're a financial planner or dress shop. I have a 70% off sale, or, they want to help you with your retirement. So they mail you a card, so there's some branding and marketing going on, which is smart to do, I think.
That's true. There's definitely so much marketing, but there's a lot of network already. And the community is big, but small. It kind of just, if you want something, you can go and find it and search for it. I think it very much works the same way as just you shoot with one person and suddenly other people see you and it spreads in that way. There is also a lot of, like she mentioned, a lot of models saw her work and then started messaging her. There's a lot of like cold calling of finding that there are people who are interested in models. So kind of, you could say throwing out your resume to people who look like they might want to use models or look for your certain kind of look. And that becomes a very big thing nowadays. I was actually just telling Wendy about this earlier, how much there's like this cold calling and I mean, it feels almost like spamming. Like I feel very much like that person that calls you and asks you if you want a phone line with your internet connection. But a lot of people, because there are so many models now, they don't need to go out and look for models. They just wait and see who applies and kind of choose from these applications that they receive in their emails and their messages and their social media. And then, of course, people just post on their social media when they'll be in certain areas or what they're booking or what their specials are. And it works almost like anything else. Just,
I mean, that's the way we did it in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I worked in New York City for an advertising agency, big major clients. And you had it was just normal to call, I mean, it was normal to make phone calls and it's normal to give your picture and resume if you're an actor. Yeah. You're doing radio voiceover work, you're doing film work, or you're doing TV commercial work. It's the same thing. They need to see you, they need to meet you, and you go on a go-see, you show your book. It's sort of the same thing.
It is very similar. It's just now we have social media and we don't have to leave the house to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to meet in person. I mean, I will always want to meet a client that's interested in working with me in person. I feel that just if someone calls, how much does it cost? it's like they're just getting prices, and I'm, if they love my work, then they won't care, but I feel that I'm fair, in my price, but, everybody has a budget. So there's that, and they have time, and the budgets and time are part of the thing together. But I don't know, you see their Instagram pages, you see their range, what they're capable of doing, how they do what they do matters to me. It really matters to me as a photographer, because I want to work with someone who, I don't know, I just get a good feeling of the work is, they're also curating their own work, and they're editing their own work sometimes. And they are an artist as well. So, I mean, they're making those decisions. I mean, when you shoot, it's like being a symphony conductor. I mean, I'm really serious about this. You have all your elements, you've got all your musicians, right? And they play different things, different times. So, and they have to work together, so it's just a lot of different things. But yeah, I really feel like when I'm looking at a model's work, I'm looking at artwork, because sometimes they don't post what you shoot of them. They're not required to do that. They may not even be following you, it's just a lot of crazy stuff today. It's just the way it is.
It really is crazy. I would say that.
It's a lot. It's overwhelming sometimes. Yeah.
It's very interesting perspective, though, that you are looking for that, the spark of artist in your model. Can you guys educate me a little bit on the whole photography business, if you will? Because you were talking back and forth about how to find someone, like reach out, write an email, find someone on social media. So how normally does that happen from the arrangement perspective? And I'm sorry for my cat being a part of this conversation. He just can't resist being in camera.
Included.
Yeah. Until they're included, and then they have to leave.
Right, exactly.
So who is normally seeking who? Photographer is looking for a model, or a model is looking for a photographer to do a shoot? Or does it depend on who's got the idea for a shoot? Or is it equal? And about the business arrangements and payments, how is that happening? I mean, that's kind of I don't know. I just got that question popping into my mind, because you guys dropped those words a couple times. I wasn't going to talk about business stuff, but I'm just curious.
There's so much. The answer is yes and no to everything. I always think of it as from parts of the Caribbean, there's no rules. Everything's just guidelines. It's a really do your own adventure kind of freelance of any kind. And I don't know if it's just the fact that it's so non-conventional that everyone's kind of making it up as they go, or if it's one of those things that we couldn't even do rules because everyone wants to do something different. I don't necessarily know what it's always going to be like in every business, but it is very much everyone can kind of do what they want and how they want. People always wonder, I guess, how that relationship goes of who hires who. Honestly, it's just based on whatever it is that you want. And I know that's not really a concrete answer, but there's a lot of situations where people do it one direction or another direction. I would say very often, models don't typically hire photographers because they don't typically need photos of themselves unless they're looking for their graduation photos or their family portraits or something like that, or just for the fun of it. There's a lot of times where people hire photographers for all sorts of different things. And but I would say that often, even for portfolio work, most models want to show the work that they've done instead of the work that they might have hired a photographer for, because you're not going to be hired by various photographers who are going to capture the same thing as a hired photographer might capture of you. So you're kind of trying to show your client work and what you can do and who it is that's hiring you and who it is that you like. And your resume or your portfolio is very much your resume. So it's anyone who you could say, this person can vouch that I didn't screw up at the photo shoot, or rather that I did well at the photo shoot. So sometimes if you included someone who you hired yourself or your photos for your portfolio, they can't exactly vouch that you're a great model necessarily. But I do know some people who will go ahead and do that just to like start, get started, to get somewhere in the network, to get somewhere in the community. But it's also very much that photographers own the copyright to the photos. So, like, as a model, you really have no rights to these photos other than that they can't publish your face just anywhere that they want to. Therefore, they usually get a release, so they have complete control over the photography. So, as a model, it wouldn't also make too much sense half the time to pay for photos that you have no rights to do with or have any sort of real control over.
Yeah, I mean, when I first got started, there was something called TFP. There still is TFP. TFP means trade for pictures, or some people say it's about time, trade for time. And it gives you an opportunity to learn to work with the model, because a photographer is also learning, lighting, which is almost like playing a violin, because you're always practicing, you're always trying to perfect your control of light. And there's a lot that goes into that. And it's, physical, and you need a space to do it in. And so there's, I've moved forward in doing this. I've done this now. I was a graphic designer for 25 years, and I've always been a photographer, really. I mean, I've lived in different cities. And when I lived in Pittsburgh, I rented my own darkroom, because back then people were still doing darkroom in the 90s still, even though there were DSLRs out. But they just didn't take off as much. I think they were quite expensive. So anyway, the point is back then, I was doing that. But anyway, then as time wore on, the 2000s, and then the teens is when I really started getting more into doing, shooting. And I sort of stopped doing full-time graphic design, and now I'm a full-time photographer. But I'm a creative photographer. I'm an artistic portrait photographer. I mean, that's how I refer to myself. Do I do commercial work? Sure, because I spent so many years in the design field. I work for a local magazine that's like a lifestyle type of thing, related to the South. A lot of wedding mock, I don't know what they call it. I call them mock weddings, or food photography I've done. Or the other day, there was a chef that makes his own knives, and how he fell into that. And we showed some of the knives from the store, and, we set it up, we styled the whole thing, and that will be in the magazine. But, my creative work, I travel to do that too. I'm going up to Pennsylvania at the end of October, because someone in a nearby town has a club that, they set up, all the models are coming. There's going to be, I don't know how many, 5 or whatever. You hire them, you book them. And it's in a beautiful building that was an old school. Many people know about it. It's called the J.W. Cooper School, but the city of Shenandoah, Pennsylvania has taken it over. So, they could do a remote shoot from there. I mean, they're not, but I'm going there to do that. But as far as models and hiring, we sort of know the same people. And as far as getting paid, I know that someone that I have known in the past, a photographer, would charge the models, especially if they were new, a certain amount of money. It wasn't a fortune, but a few $100s or a couple $100s to have a photo shoot with him. But he would spend a good amount of time with them. 2 hours, 3 hours. That's a long time. And he got something out of it, and she got something out of it, or whoever the interchange. So it's different now. If the models have work, like maybe they're hired to sell jewelry, then, that might be for an advertising ad for a magazine, or if the jewelry company themselves, and that's, they've got to negotiate the prices and stuff. And, I'm sure that any of the models that I know could do those kind of jobs if they wanted.
There's so many different
layers and types of models.
Exactly. So many reasons people either hire a photographer or hire a model, or do neither and only work for a trade kind of benefit. I know people who are trying to just pretty much make money off of fan bases now instead of like any sort of charging of like other artists. So you have a lot of this like new NFT selling trends. Selling
that's a whole huge
that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
And then there's like fan sites now, so you get paid pretty much by fans just to view content. I mean, there's like so many layers.
Yeah,
and
photographers can do that too. I mean, I just haven't, but yeah.
And then there's like content. So like there's now the rise of like the Instagram and social media model. They actually, I didn't think about them, but they'll hire photographers because they need content for their social media that they're getting paid for from social media or brands or for their blog and advertisements. And so there's like, it's kind of become one of those things where it just kind of depends on who you are, who your clientele is, and then therefore what supplies do you need to pay for. So like sometimes models are the supplies for the photographer, and sometimes photographers are the supplies for the model, and you just have to pay that kind of cost in order to get what you need, so you can get paid by your own clientele, which is brands, sponsorships, other artists, other photographers, other models, other clients, random people who want their photos taken. I mean, there's kind of a whole world, and like I said, it's a choose your own adventure. Who do you want to work for? And then you kind of figure out how you get about doing that.
Yeah, it's really changed. I mean, when I think there was a status quo for sure in these industries. You know, you had print industry, newspapers and magazines. They have a thing, but now they're online too. Yeah. And then, you know, you had photography was a certain way, well,
and it used to
and music, you know, I mean, it's like amazing. Nobody buys albums anymore. They buy songs. You know, so
well, they don't even buy the songs anymore. They just buy the
subscription.
Subscription.
And then they pay for the songs. Or like these days, like magazines hardly pay artists anymore.
Well, they never did, I don't think.
Did they really not?
No, because editorial work is typically very the thing about editorial is, from what I know, and there's of course more to it.
She would probably know more than that.
Well, I know a little bit. I mean, I know that you can be very creative if you're doing editorial work, but they don't pay you a lot.
Yeah.
But then if a client is doing something very specific, let's say, I don't know, it's a Revlon comes in with a lipstick,
right?
You know, you've got 50 people there looking at the color, is it right? You know, I mean, there's so much scrutiny on the set, you know, for their product that they're trying to release. So it's much more professional photographers. Maybe they're, you know, more in New York or Atlanta or a big city. And, you know, it's expensive for them to, you know, have a production of something like that. But, you know, it's just, I feel like the industry, it's really, the technology has changed this industry. In a big way. Because, I mean, when I was growing up, or at least found photography, and really, when I was in art school, I spent a lot of time in the library looking at a lot of books. And I mean, I didn't know about half these people. I mean, you know, and I was just so moved deeply by what I saw. I mean, I just can't even explain it. And no, I felt like no one experienced life the way I did because of what I saw. And today anybody can. It's not just these pockets of people, because there's a gentleman in my area and he lives out in the country and he's interested in the same exact things. And it's like, how did this person, you know, get exposed to the things that I went away to New York and Providence and college and this to learn and to get exposed to? I mean, but, you know, he had access to books too. So he must have found those. And I mean, there wasn't Amazon, you know, I mean, when I lived in New York City, you walk into any bookstore and just media was everywhere. And it was just, you'd get lost in these places, and it just was so wonderful for your brain and mind, you know. And now today, you know, I mean, it's overwhelming how much information there is out there. How do you, you know, make sense of all this? But people, there's always so much talent coming up, and I mean,
I mean, in a lot of ways, you sometimes get a lot more garbage and a lot of things you have to sift through. But then in so many other ways, so many people finally have the opportunity to create or to do something or to showcase themselves or to learn something about someone else. Like, it's one of those things where like it's a double-edged sword, and that we're all like able to find our community a little bit more, but at the same time, we don't always have to learn about other kinds of people if we don't want to. We can stay within our bias, and we never have to like think that maybe we're wrong anymore.
I mean, there are more models today. I never would have thought. I mean, I did my own, nude work when I was in college, or not nude work, just my own pictures of myself, but it was, with film. And I never would have thought to be a model as a career, I mean, I was drawing from the nude model. I went to Atlanta grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, but when I got an opportunity to go to Atlanta College of Art, which was, now SCAD or whatever. But back then, I did a summer program there, and it was amazing. But I was exposed to being able to paint and draw from the nude. And today, like I said, I mean, I never would have expected. I mean, the model might have been so many handful of models, but now there are just so many people trying.
And everyone can start out and try.
That's right.
You can be anyone, and you can do it.
That's right. You can do whatever you want today. It's just amazing. It really, truly is.
And it opens up a lot. Like there's no gatekeeping. Like you can have any body type or come from any sort of background and try modeling. Like there's no like, I mean, I would definitely say in some cases it can be harder if you have a different kind of look, because people still like to go for a certain type, a certain genre, something that they've already seen.
That's true. But I will say this, the thing you were talking about, body type, I don't think it matters, honestly. It's another thing, because if you're good at what you do, it shows. It just shows. And I would work with anyone that I felt that energy coming from. Yeah. So
I'm glad to hear that body type doesn't matter anymore, because it means I have a chance.
Oh yeah. What's interesting about modeling is I think there's very different types, and like you get this very standard idea of modeling, which is the idea that I kind of grew up with learning, is that it was all about your looks. You had to look a certain way, and people only hire you because you have a nose that's shaped in this direction and cheekbones that's shaped like this, and you sit in front of a camera so that way people can paint and do stuff to your face and make it look a certain way so someone else can take a photo. But like there's so much more to modeling than just that. I mean, there is that kind of modeling, and I've seen it, where it really is only based on what you were born with or what you've decided to get cosmetically changed on your face, or body or whatever else. But then there's so much about just the creation of it. And with modeling, it becomes more about like how you can use your body and what you can do with your body, rather than just what you were given to look like. And does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think of this gentleman who was a ballet dancer, and he shapes, not like a dad, like what people say dads look like, but he, he's body hair, the whole thing, but he dances and he's very good. I mean, he can move so well, and people really enjoy watching him. I mean, he's got a lot of subscribers and a lot of, and I'm into movement too. I mean, I studied dance, and, I've done all kinds of stuff, but to watch this person, so body, it just doesn't matter. I feel like they're just, I don't know, with any kind of beauty gift that you're giving something beautiful to the world, it's what's coming from inside your brain and your heart, that's a lot.
It makes sense. Yeah, it totally makes sense. You can be a static, almost like an object, or you can actually project the energy. And I have seen it in multiple works, and in your work, Wendy, in particular. And I have gone through your Instagram, Astrid, and your photos are absolutely beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. So I wouldn't be able to describe it as well as you guys do, because I'm not in the photography world, but I can sense it. I can definitely see it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Well, we are at the top of the hour. Okay. And I think the last thing that I wanted to ask you is some sort of a message to your fellow creatives from your perspective. I know we were talking a lot about technology, how it's changing the world of photography and creativity in general, and the boundaries being lifted, borders being open, and a lot of possibilities and new talents coming in. So what would be your message to someone who is either still hesitant of trying new things or is new to this world and is just, just starting to dip their toes in the water?
Well, I make it short. Have no fear and just do it. Really.
Great.
Solid. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, just because everyone puts their stuff out on the internet doesn't mean that you have to, and you got to start somewhere. So if you screw up, I mean, that's one of the nice things, especially about photography, is that you only have like a digital copy of this thing. You never have to post it. You never have to print it. You never have to look at it again. You can delete it from your life, but you have to start somewhere. And I've noticed that if you start soon and you keep just working at it as hard as you can, the more you do it, the more often you do it, the more you practice, the better you really do get. I mean, it's just about throwing yourself in completely, and you really can't learn this but any other way.
You just have to do it. You have to stay on the bus. That's another one of those phrases. You just can't, you have to keep going.
Oh my God.
I've had so many things where I shoot and I come home and I'm like horrified. But you know what? It's usually okay. I don't know why I have that reaction, but
you can always edit something out, I would say. But I guess also, and the last thing is, there's absolutely no rules. Anyone who tries to tell you a rule about how to do things or how something should look or how something should be, I fell for this so often. I'm such a rule-based kind of person.
Yeah, me too.
And like, it just screwed me up for so long. I think I was creating some like horrible stuff based on just trying to like follow rules of what it meant to like be an artist and what art should look like.
Yeah, I think school can do that. And I was sort of affected that way too.
School can definitely do that. And I'd say there's definitely people in the community that will always tell you that they know better and that you should listen to them. And it's just like, it's like anything else in the world. Like, listen if you want, try it out, see if it works for you. And if it doesn't, remember the choose your own adventure, and the thing that works, the thing that works. Like,
well, I had 25 years of having to collaborate with people as a designer, and no criticism is too small or big for me because I know how to handle that, and it just doesn't matter to me anymore. You know, I'm doing it for me, and if the world loves it, great. If they don't, and I learn something, great too. You know, I mean,
definitely if you stay more authentic to yourself, people feel that. And it resonates a lot more than when you're just trying to please other people.
Yeah, I'm not trying to please anyone. I'm just trying to work my craft because I love it. And that's pretty much it. And I think Astrid's like that too. She's just working her craft, and you know she loves what she does. I do.
I
know.
I do.
I can tell.
It's beautiful. Yeah. And I think, Astrid, you mentioned a few times during this interview, you had this phrase, choose your own adventure. I think that's going to be a tagline for the episode. Seriously, it kind of captures everything that we were talking about.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You're beautiful people.
Thank you, Galina.
Thanks for the opportunity. This is
great. Thank you.
This is an awesome conversation. Thank you. And you guys have a great day.
You too.
And we'll see you in the art scene.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.